Ark Survival of the Fittest released in 2016 and was met with some pretty great reception, but I'm sure some of you are saying, hang on, this isn't the original one. This is obviously the new one which got adapted in 2022, 2023, or December of 22, and was brought out to the masses through Ark. And sadly, this was not one to stay. All these servers got taken down before Ark Survival Ascended released, and then it was merely replaced with Bob's Tall Tales with Scorched Earth's release. So what really caused this downfall of Survival of the Fittest, and will we ever see it again? Personally, I think there are quite a few factors with this, but let's just start from the beginning with the original SOTF. I think a lot of people jumped on at the beginning and it was reasonably successful, but considering there was only access to PC players and new updates weren't really coming as quickly as they should have been, the player base quickly died out over the coming year, and it sort of stayed like that until they announced that they were doing a new one, and the audience of Ark was very excited by this, myself included, and there was no one really saying, oh no, this is a bad thing, this shouldn't be happening. Everyone was on board that SOTF was going to be getting an upgrade, at least from what I was seeing in the media at the time. There was a very high opinion of this coming, and you know, I was certainly one who was backing it as well. I even made my own content on it back in the day once it did its thing, but I think there were still a lot of issues coming from the original which also made it fail in some similar ways. Firstly, there's no sort of matchmaking system, and this would have made getting into games much easier, but you know, having more players on the game in the first place would have helped a lot as well, as you know, there are only a few servers with people in when you joined, and maybe 1 or 2 servers that you'd actually want to be on, because there'll be enough people to actually start a game, but sometimes you'd be waiting for half an hour to an hour for a game to even start. A lot of people still had the game, but just barely anyone played it because no one really was playing it. A lot of people did jump on though when Survival of the Fittest released for the second time in December of 22, but considering it was delayed for consoles at that time and it was only allowed for PC, it was a rocky launch once again, and players weren't particularly happy with all of that happening, which, you know, it was a shame for many, and I think it did kill the mood a bit at the start and possibly warranted its downfall as well. I think considering its original reception from the community, Wildcard and of course Snail Games, who played a much bigger role in all of this back then, although they're dying off these days, and thank God for that really, as they've had some questionable business practices to say the least. I think, you know, they expected it to do much better than it actually ended up doing, as the player base again died off quickly like it did initially, but perhaps even faster than with the original SOTF, as there wasn't that original novelty factor. It still suffered from a few of the same issues, mainly just to do with there being no matchmaking and the lobbies just being sort of not user-friendly to get into, and again, not enough people on at the time. And you know, Ark wasn't in the best of states when SOTF launched for the second time, and again, it was a rocky launch because console players didn't have access to it yet. So, you know, there was a lot of controversy perhaps going on at the time too, and with, you know, ASA not really being revealed on when its release date was either at the time, or at least being quite ambiguous or delayed in some sort of way. You know, there was a lot of emphasis towards that as well, and what we're going to get from ASA 2. So I think a lot of players felt it's too close to ASA, I might as well just wait until ASA comes out and then do it on there. And some people were like, well, I'm not a console player, I can't even play it yet, and then I can't play it with my friends because crossplay wasn't a thing either on this, which, you know, personally I don't really agree with. But there we go, that wasn't a thing which was allowed on SOTF either, and I think that hurt it as well, as people couldn't just play with their friends again. PC players were locked with PC players, and Xbox players were locked with Xbox players, etc, etc, which isn't the way really it should be, but that's the way it all turned out. And due to this lack of success, it was obviously pulled. First, initially though, just so it could be moved on to ASA, which I think was Wildcard and Snail's first initial mistake. Personally, I think they never should have done this, as pulling support from ASE meant all the ASE players now could not play it, and you essentially cut off most of your player base, as really not many people were jumping onto ASA, and all the people that were playing SOTF on ASA, it's just the exact same thing as it was on ASE. And obviously this is on ASE, what you're seeing here, because I didn't record any of my SOTF ASA stuff because I just did it in my own time, did a few games and was sort of done with it, because there wasn't anything new, there wasn't anything fresh, there wasn't anything that was being delivered. And obviously further from that, since it wasn't on ASE anymore, all the ASE players couldn't play it, and then, you know, with console mismatches and all of that, and performance not being great on ASA for a lot of people, it just basically cut off all the supply of people that wanted to play SOTF and would actually play SOTF. And from that, lobbies just died off, and from that, Snail was just like, and probably with Wildcard as well, just like, oh, we're going to get rid of it and we're going to put Bob's Tall Tales there instead, and then people are going to have to pay for that, and then boom, we can make them have that instead of SOTF, and it completely replaced it there. And, you know, from that, it's gone, and still from here, it is gone as well. SOTF, as far as I'm concerned, is not coming back. There is still the SOTF 2.0 mod on ASC which you can play, but you need a good handful of friends if you're going to jump on to that, and it's still not this newer version which we're seeing here. So all of that work seemingly put in for nothing, and it is a shame, to be honest. SOTF, in my opinion, at least this newer one, was far superior to the original, but if they'd kept it up with some exciting updates and some different maps and things like that, then I think potentially the game could have gone much further than it initially did. And again, with some matchmaking features, it could have really taken off again. So there are a lot of issues with its launch, a few gameplay designs which were pretty simple fixes, and a lack of updates. And I think these are the main reasons why SOTF sort of failed and why it was pulled, of course. And if it doesn't bring in the money, then they're just gonna get rid of it, and it seems that's the way with a lot of these things these days. But I would like to see a return, and if there ever was a return of SOTF, I'd definitely jump on the gun and start playing it. It would actually be another reason for me to start playing ASA again, but there's a lot of other issues with optimization and general stuff further from that which they need to fix, of course, as well. But I won't get into the details of my thoughts on ASA. This is an SOTF video, and I think it is a shame what has happened to SOTF. I think a lot of good could have come from this game, and I think if they added a few extra things, it could have been played by all the hot players out there and enjoyed by everyone who wanted to enjoy it, and people would consistently play it, as it is a fun and enjoyable game, and I do like it. There's a lot of successful first-person shooters out there, and I know this isn't a first-person shooter, but there's no reason why this should have failed, really, if it was all done right. And there are just a few issues with it which I think pulled it down the drain, and I possibly think Snail had a little bit to do with the pulling of this game as well. In fact, I definitely think there was as well. But that does come to the end of this video, and I want to know your thoughts and your opinions on this as well. As you know, it's not just my thoughts and opinions which matter, it's your thoughts and your opinions as well. Did you like SOTF? What flaws did you find with it? And do you think it was fair that they pulled the game off? Do you never want to see SOTF again? Is it your least favorite game mode ever? What are your general opinions on it? Because personally, I would really love to see it return, and I think it would be great if it did, but I don't really think it will, sadly, due to just Bob's Tall Tales taking the spotlight, and obviously it's not going to come back to ASE because nothing's really going to come to ASE again. So I think it's gone for good, but if it wasn't gone for good, it would really, really mean a lot to me. So if Wildcard does watch this small channel, this small video, and potentially sees a spark of light in SOTF, then please bring it back. But I don't reckon it will happen. Either way, I've been basically repeating myself for 10 minutes. I think that's enough of my rambly rant, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Macy-Juski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.